In today's lesson, we're going to be talking about yardages and how different situations can affect the yardages that you're actually playing. So let's get stuck into the lesson and find out what they are right now. So the first scenario we're going to talk about is how rough's going to affect our flight of our golf ball. We've got one here that's sat in the semi-rough that's actually sat pretty nicely, and then just a couple of yards we stay in the semi, but we see that this one's a little bit buried now and a lot of grass behind the golf ball. Still can see quite a lot of it. If I were to take my yardage and see how far I've actually got from here, when we look, we can see that it is 160 yards up to the flag where it is placed. So for me, the way it is today with the conditions, that's going to be a nice 8-iron for me out of this lie here. I can get to the club quite nicely, to the ball quite nicely. It's not really going to affect how the ball flies. I would play this as if it was actually sat on the fairway. It's actually a pretty decent lie, if anything slightly teed up, so I can get really behind the golf ball and see that it would fly its total distance. So let's give that a little go. And comes out absolutely beautifully, and we see it now just pitching on the front of the green. The problem with this one here, what I might find is that it's not actually going to come out as well as it would do with the one that I want. Because of that little bit of grass there, it's going to stop. But it's not to the point where if I was in here, I would be chopping down to a 9-iron because the grass is absolutely horrible. So I'm confident I can still strike that one and still get my flight on it. So even though we're at the same yardage, what I'm actually going to do is just go up one club to my 7-iron just to allow for that little bit of a buffer in between the grass. I know it's going to fly, but it's not going to get much of a flyer there because it's damp and soggy. It's not going to go shooting off too much. What I will do is just grip down ever so slightly and then make the same golf swing, and what we should see, just because of this slight buffer in between the face and the ball, I should still get a pretty good flight. So as it comes out, a little bit dead as it comes out, but it's still gone that same distance. It might be the other way round, that from that angle, if the ball was sat and the grass was a little bit finer and drier, we might get the flyer. So depending on how the rough is on the day that you're playing, you've really got to learn how it's going to affect your golf ball, because just from 2 yards apart, I've hit different clubs and ended up with pretty similar results there. If I would have tried and hit my 8-iron out of there, would have come a little bit flat because of that wet soggy grass, so I've used this one just to force it forwards. But if it was dry and I did that with my 7-iron, I probably would have got a bit of a flyer. So understanding how the rough is going to affect your golf ball is one of the big scenarios we need to know when we're out on the golf course. Let's go and take a look at the second one and see how that affects our ball flight. So this is scenario 2. We've got 2 golf balls here and I'm hitting out up to a flag in this direction. I found myself off the fairway, and what we've got to understand is how slope plays. As we look at this hole here, it's rising back up towards the green. Now from here, where I'm currently at, the flag is at 157 yards as a basic yardage. But using slope with things like your rangefinders, what we will see is the actual yardage is 10 yards further on from there. So if I were to hit my 8-iron knowing that that's my 158 club from here, what would actually happen is, as I pitch this one in, pretty good strike, and as it comes down, it's fallen into the front trap because I played its standard yardage. What I've got to equate for is the slope that's in play. From there then, I can choose the club that's going to go the necessary distance and commit to that one to see that it gets its actual yardage. So I've opted for my 7-iron playing its actual distance now, so I can put a good swing on it in the fact that I know it's not playing 158 and it's actually playing 168. So when I hit this one, really nice strike, flying out, and it's pitched just a yard or two past the flag there. So understanding how slope is going to affect your golf ball. If you're going uphill, you've got to carry it further, you're going to need more club. Downhill, it's going to carry further anyway, so you're going to take less club. Let's go and take a look at that third and final scenario. Guys, before we get into the third and final thing that we need to look out for on the golf course, I want you to get better at golfing. You're going to do that by joining me here on the channel every week for your free golf lessons. Hit the subscribe button down here, turn on that bell notification, and don't miss your free golf lessons. Let's all get better together by doing these lessons. Let's get on to that third and final thing now. So the third scenario all comes down to how wind is going to affect us. We're on the 13th tee here at Warrington Golf Club, and if I just zap the flag now, it's 155 yards, playing 156, and if I were to just play that as a normal yardage, nice little 8-iron for me there, we might find that something happens with the wind conditions today. The pin is pretty tucked back in this location there, so I've got to get all the way back to that flag as I hit this one. I've selected my 8-iron, I've equated for the slope. Let's make the swing and see what happens. So not too bad, pretty decent for me, but I've only really found the front portion of the green there. Reason for that being, I didn't allow for the wind. If I were to just take some grass, pretty simply, it's a little bit dewy here this morning, so it's pretty tough to do this, but if I throw it up, the wind's actually coming into us here. It's not that noticeable down on the ground, but when I start looking at the trees around me, I can see the tops of the trees moving. So one of the things that happens quite a lot on the golf course is we underestimate the power of the wind. If we're only feeling a little bit down here, when the ball flies up in the air and gets above the peak of the trees, what we will see is the wind starts to have a little bit more of effect. So when you're out on the golf course, you've got to take this into account. Even though it's 156, because that wind is playing into me now, it's only a little breeze, but it's adding maybe 5 to 6 yards on, so it's gone up to that 160, 165 mark now for me. So I'd have to really bust an 8-iron to get all the way back there. But if I hit a smooth 7-iron, even if I don't get it, I'm still going to be further up there. Vice versa, it might be that the wind's coming across or right to left and you don't equate for that. You could be stood aiming at a left pin with the wind off the right, hit a great shot and it just pushes it into that bunker. So when you're out on the golf course, so quick and easy just to throw a bit of grass up into the air and see what the wind is doing. Equate for it, allow for it. If you're starting to get into that point where you're controlling your golf ball, then it's really something you've got to take into consideration, because if I make the same swing now and hit a pretty similar shot, we should see that the wind can't have as much effect on this, or I've allowed for it. So from there then, pretty similar shot. And if we just pan up to the green there and we look at where those two golf balls are, the second one is 10 yards further up the green than the first one, just because I've allowed for the wind as I've made my club selection. So 3 things you've got to be doing there, guys. Understand how the rough's going to affect your ball flight, understand how that slope is going to change your yardage, and how the wind's going to affect your yardage. If you can do those 3 things out on the golf course, you should see that you start to get more control of your ball and start shooting better scores. As I said earlier, as always, do hit that subscribe button. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. Remember to join me for your free golf lessons and get better by clicking that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.